All right, Andy Johnson, we are going to do a couple of videos looking at how to read research studies. Now, research is different than collecting data. For research to be research, it has to be peer-reviewed, blind peer-reviewed, and published in an academic journal. It needs some sort of peer review. Without it, people can make all sorts of claims, and the for-profits often collect data and they say research shows that. Well, research doesn't show anything unless and until it has been published. So how do you read a research article? And most people don't start at the beginning and read them straight through. There are strategies. And this is a mixed method, meaning it collects some quantitative data, but it relies a lot on qualitative or observational data. So a couple different ways. At the very basic level, you always start with the abstract, and that will give you a sense of the study and the results. Some people at the very lowest level will read the abstract and then skip right to the results section. That is very common to do at some level. So people read them at different levels. Now this has the qualitative elements and it makes it a little bit more difficult to read, as you see. But at the lowest level of reading and analysis, the abstract, the results, the discussion. The next part is the review of the literature. This is essential in putting the question in a theoretical context and then in the context of past research. Now, some people skip this and go right to the methods. If you are doing your own study, I love this because I like to see what they're citing, and based on this, I'll go look at other similar research. For example, if they're citing people, I'll go, oh, that looks like an interesting study. I may need to get that, and that's why we have reference sections, so I can go and find interesting stuff that they cite. And we don't believe anybody. You have to cite your sources. This is the 1999 study, quite a few years ago, but here's the thing. Just because it's old doesn't mean it's outdated or it's not good. There are a lot of wonderful studies published 10, 20, 30 years ago that are still, data doesn't somehow disappear or age. There are some studies that hold up over time, and this is one of them. So they're comparing a constructivist whole language classroom to a skills-based classroom. So that is our sense. If I'm doing a lit review, writing my own article, I always read the review of literature very thoroughly because I want to see what the context is. So I recommend this. And if it's a subject I'm interested, of course I want to read the literature review. But if you don't, you skim right down here, and right before the method, the next thing is to find the research question. What exactly are you trying to find out? And based on that, that helps me understand the data. Now, 6 children participated. Okay, that tells me it's going to be more qualitative. There are some quantitative, some numbers, but it's an understanding kind of study, not a supporting a hypothesis type of study. Match case studies mean they try to put similar students in different groups. If they had a skills-based and a whole language classroom, they'll put students of similar abilities in each one. They'll match the students. So I'm guessing 3 and 3 were similarly matched. The research questions, that's important. Focused on matched case study, children, we wanted to investigate their stance towards reading and the strategies they knew and used in 2 parallel circumstances. Circumstances were a controlled reading sample with the researchers and ordinarily occurring independent reading classroom. All right, that tells me there's going to be a lot of observation here in understanding this. They did collect some data. So the method, or sometimes it's called methodology, tells me how they're going about things. And this tells a little bit about the classroom, skills-based and constructivist, first grade and kindergarten, all right, how they were selected. It tells me a little bit about how they are selected. Now in research, when you're reading research, whether it's qualitative, quantitative, or something like this, this is kind of a mixture of both. If they're comparing one thing to another, you have to make sure the two things they're comparing are similar, that the instruction or the treatment or whatever given to both groups is about the same. For example, I was reading a study by Torgerson, and his experimental group was pulled out of the class, and they got 40 minutes a day of instruction by a highly trained research assistant. And the others, not so much. They just stayed there. They didn't get the extra treatment. So they were not similar in comparison because students were pulled out individually and given this specialized treatment. They got additional stuff besides the classroom stuff. And also, pulling out a student every day and giving them highly individualized instruction, struggling readers, while it's ideal, we rarely have the resources to give students this individual help that they need. Anyway, off on a tangent. So you are reading the methodology to understand these things, how they are similar. Are they similar, the two groups, in the makeup of the subjects or participants? And in a quantitative research, they're called subjects. In a qualitative research, they're called participants. They are participating in the study. And you want to see if the treatment is similar to both groups. All right, they do have some tests here. Also, the type of measures given are in the methodology. So they talk about the tests entering kindergarten and so-so and how they are going to observe them and what they're going to be recording. Describes the participants here in the study. Yes, yes, yes. How the data were collected and analyzed. This is important. It gives us all information. And then I go to the results. Now, often, I look for specific things. I kind of told you. Now, this deep analysis of the method. If I'm getting to this results section and it either seems a little fishy or I didn't quite understand something, that's when I go back and do a hard analysis on the methodology. But often I go right to the results and the discussion. The results are just the data collected. That's it. That's all they're doing. Now, this is a qualitative research, so it is a little bit longer and harder to read because their data are the thick descriptions or include the thick descriptions. So qualitative research enables you to understand. It gives you a deep understanding. It's not used to prove anything. By the way, research is never used to prove anything. It supports or doesn't support a hypothesis. In the educational research, the social sciences, it does not prove anything. It supports a hypothesis, and every research study is a bit of data to support theories. So qualitative, thick description, thick description, thick description, okay. And then I'm looking for summaries at the end of this. Children from constructivist based whole read far longer than children. Okay, yep. The courage versus, okay, these are kind of summary results of the data, summary results. They're talking about classroom reading now, this section, and they're describing. And I go through there, and here's a summary of the results from this section, and we see them here. And then a discussion, what the data might mean. Differences we found show that children from constructivist whole language had more strategy use and more positive stance than their comparison. A reasonable inference is that the intellectual environment of this classroom had an effect on the children's learning. This study helps confirm the claims, all right? Nowhere does it say this proved that, all right? It just creates a picture, and it's a reasonable inference, and it connects to other research studies. The claims of motivation-related literature, all right, it's connecting to other stuff. The findings show that instructional environments influence literacy. And always, the results and the discussion, they they use softer language than this shows, this demonstrates, this proves. All right, they soften it up. Instructional implications, what it might mean in practice. All right, that's generally how you read a qualitative research article. You start with the abstract. I like to then go right to the results and discussion. That's what I do, my order. Then I began to, if I really want to dig deep, I go into the literature review, but I often skip the lit review, all right? I often go right then to the research question, and then I look at, okay, the methodology. How were they selected? How were they put in groups? What exactly did they measure?